Hello and welcome to Sam Not So Wise. My name is Sam. So I've finally done it. I've finally started Malazan Book of the Fallen with the first book, Gardens of the Moon, which I'm talking about today in a spoiler-free manner, a review of sorts. It has been a long time coming starting this series, mostly due to its reputation of being amongst the most difficult series in the world of sci-fi and fantasy. I'll talk a little bit about those expectations later in the video. Also because it is a long series, so there are 10 books in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, kind of seen as like the main series. All rather large books. I think Gardens of the Moon is the smallest and they only kind of get bigger from there on out, and it's not a short book. Also, there are several sub-series in the world. I'm not really sure how many, but there are quite a few. If I love a series or an author, I can be a little bit of a completionist. So therefore, if I end up loving this series, I'll likely want to read everything within the universe. So, that is a lot of books to read. So it's kind of intimidating in terms of the size of the series as well. Lastly, I'm told that the most rewarding thing someone can do when reading Malazan Book of the Fallen is to reread it. So to have to read all of those books and then reread them is just so much reading. So it's kind of I've been put off because of these reasons. But after hearing so many people say that Malazan is one of their favorites, if not their favorite of all time, and after gaining some kind of reading chops over the years, I think it is time to finally dig my teeth into this behemoth of a series, and that is what I have done. So that's what I'm talking about today. Gardens of the Moon, I've finally started. Now it is raining here, hopefully that provides some kind of nice ambient sounds, but with that and much further ado, let's talk about Gardens of the Moon. So what exactly is Gardens of the Moon about for those who haven't read it? Well, that is quite difficult to describe, spoiler-free fashion, as it is quite a complex plot with so many moving parts and a lot of twists along the road, but I'll do my best to give a little bit of a summary. Essentially, it is following the relentless movement of the Malazan Empire, who are making big inroads on a continent called Genabakis. After the brutal sack of a city called Pale, the Empire is making moves to take over the last bastion of resistance in this land, the grand city of Darujistan. Now, we follow a selection of kind of special agents who attempt to infiltrate the city and severely weaken it before the army can come in and wipe up the dregs of what is left. On the opposite side to this, we face several movers who fight to oppose the crushing force of the oncoming empire with a ragtag group of unlikely people, an incredibly ancient lord of the dark, and a cabal of powerful mages doing the legwork against the empire. In between this, we have meddling gods, an assassin war, an awakened big power, a masquerade, kind of a hopeless romance in a way, a magical puppet, and much, much more that all play important parts which eventually culminate in an almighty convergence. And that is about all I can say spoiler-free about the plot. Something I can kind of describe to you though is the world building. Now this is an area in which complexity is very much at the forefront, as this is a huge world that is not explained through sections of exposition, no info dumps, anything like that. Here we are really only exploring one continent, that of Genabakis, and most of the story takes place in that large city, Darujistan. It is quite a dark world. Some people call it grimdark, mainly due to the actions of the Empire and their brutality. At least that's how I'm seeing it so far in this first book. But I would say at the moment, without the Empire being there, it's not necessarily a grimdark world. There is hope there. And even with the Empire being there, we are not in a world devoid of light or love, but it is very dark in many respects. There is a magic system. It is on the softer side of magic systems where magic isn't fully explained to us, but it seems to have at least some guidelines to it as to its uses, that is, such as there are things called warrens, these, I don't know what you'd call it, like a portal almost, that are related to specific gods. And each warren seems to have its own merits as relating to the gods. So it is soft, but there are certain rules that you can glean over time. Speaking of gods, we have a few gods who are working their influence in this story, mostly in a covert way, but not always. And they tend to kind of work through the people in the story, giving them objects, nudges, or even special powers that they can use to, do what the gods want them to do. At this point, we only have a handful of gods in play, but there are quite a few others mentioned in passing throughout the story, which I am sure will come into being in later books. There are also various non-human people, various different races, including kind of like ancients who may or may not be coming back into the frame. So lovers of world building, like me, I'm a big fan of deep world building, will have an absolutely wonderful time, as I did. I loved this world. It feels immensely rich and very detailed, well lived in, and fabulously realized. This is likely due to the fact that Erikson and his friend Ian Esselmont, who wrote other books within the Malazan universe, built this world over many, many years of roleplay gaming together, and it really, really does show. Erikson knows this world inside out. You can feel that for sure. And this is only a snippet of this world. Much is mentioned in passing, as I said, that is not important to this story necessarily, but leaves kind of tantalizing possibilities for the future of the series, which is very exciting to somebody like me. A point worth noting is that, unlike a lot of traditional fantasy, we are kind of just plopped right into the world's storyline, the world's timeline, as it were. This, there's no real beginning to the story that we are going from, no kind of hero's journey or anything like that, learning along with a protagonist or whatever, which I find very refreshing and honestly kind of realistic, because when you're telling the history of a land, where does the history really start? So I really like that approach, and it does take a little bit more getting used to, but if you're paying attention, you have everything you need. Sorry, I can see into my neighbour's house and they've got a new kitten and it is adorable. It's having a great time. But anyway, what about the characters? The cast of characters is fairly large, something that may add towards the complexity of the story, but for any kind of long-time readers of fantasy, this won't be anything you haven't experienced before. What helps in this regard is how vivid the characters are. They are very distinct and well drawn, meaning it is unlikely that you'll get any of them confused with any others. They are complex characters with their own believable motivations and depth, many experiencing a great level of growth within the novel, varying degrees, but some of them grow extremely throughout this book. A real plus of the book is that we get characters from both sides of the conflict. You're not just getting one side of the story. By head swapping in a third person narration, in which we are often party to inner thoughts, we see that they are all very complex and aren't necessarily how they may seem from the outside or from a biased perspective, and that the perspective of getting it from both sides really deepens out what these characters are and what their motivations may be or seem. There is no true good or evil within this story, just humans, people with motivations and flaws and emotions, and it is an absolute joy to read these kind of very realistic people. So let's talk a little bit about the complexity and kind of my expectations going into this book, as this series and this book is always kind of cited as like the hardest start to a very hard series. Now this is an expectation that kind of went in my favor because I didn't really have any big problems. So often when I have expectations going into a book, they can negatively affect me. But me having this expectation of struggling and not was an absolutely wonderful relief. Like, sure, it's not an easy book. You have to pay attention, but it is not impossible to do, especially if you are an experienced reader. Now, did I understand everything? Absolutely not. Was I supposed to? Absolutely not. Did I get everything I needed to understand what was going on in the story? Absolutely. The plot and the world are intricate and deep, but for veterans of the genre, as I said, it is a masterpiece in kind of show and don't tell, and most people will be fine. Do not pick this up if this is your first fantasy book, but people who have read a few fantasy series will be absolutely fine. A lot of what makes this book harder is that it is a deconstruction of classic fantasy in a way. As I mentioned before, it's not your typical hero's journey. You don't have a very fixed start from which we go and learn with the characters. And you're just kind of gradually given the information that you need for this specific plot, this point of the story. But this and the fact that we are given nuggets of world building outside of our story give us plenty to look forward to in later books, which for me is an absolute benefit. Yes, it is a challenging read, but I love a challenging read. I like to read something that pushes my boundaries, and this was a great example. So do not be too frightened, as I was for too long. This is doable if you take your time and pay attention. So what about thematic work? When it comes to themes in Gardens of the Moon, it has plenty to explore and done with real subtlety, as I expected from what so many people have said about this book and series in general. The themes that are cited so often with regards to Malazan are those of compassion and empathy, and this is seen in spades here in many different examples. Another is that of kind of easy judgment of people. When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And that is true here. As we are exposed to one side of a story, we may make some assumptions about characters or what is going on the other side. And then we see it from the other side to find out that we were completely wrong about that situation and about those people. A great example of kind of not judging a character by how they look or how they present themselves is that of the character Krupp, who I think is kind of like a love-hate within this world. And I've got to say, I absolutely loved Krupp. He was so funny and so brilliant at the same time. And if you make assumptions about him, it will be at your own peril for sure. The ruthlessness of empirical expansion is kind of an obvious, overt theme here, but still an important one and well executed. To counter this, we have themes of friendship and camaraderie and loyalty working together in times of desperation and showing that in this dark world there are places of hope and places of warmth. Also, a big theme is that change is possible. Learning from events that are happening to you, it does happen, and changing your perspective does happen, and it's okay to change your mind and allegiance to do what you think is best. Now, these are just a handful of the themes the book explores, so much more, but these are the ones that kind of stuck out to me personally. So as you can probably tell, I am extremely positive on this book. I absolutely loved it. I wanted to pick it up all the time. So I just want to kind of sum up what I loved. So as a fan of rich world building, this was so well drawn that I was just always fully immersed in the world. And I am just thirsting for more, thirsting to learn more about this huge world and this huge story. The characters were deep and vivid with believable flaws and great growth. The plot was fascinating and just kind of always kept me on my toes. I didn't know what was going to happen next, and that was exciting. The themes were deep and explored with true nuance, often just kind of trusting the reader to discover them themselves, not spoon-feeding anything to you. And it was challenging, but not impossible. granting great rewards for those who have patience. I must also say that I've heard endlessly that this is the worst book in the series. I can honestly say that I was enraptured for nearly all of it, so I would kind of love to know why lovers of this series say that this is the worst in the series. Is it just in comparison to the rest, the other 9 books, and where that goes? If so, brilliant. I am so excited to read more. So what is the plan moving forward with the Malazan Book of the Fallen for me? So I always planned to read Gardens of the Moon in July, which I did, and I always planned to read Dead House Gates in August, which I am definitely going to be doing. After this, I planned to take a break after Dead House Gates. Let me know if that is a good place to take a break, or whether it's after Memories of Ice or somewhere else. I'd love to have some input with that. But if I have the similar level of enjoyment with Dead House Gates as I did with Gardens of the Moon, that may become completely irrelevant anyway, because I might just need to not take a break and continue with the series if I keep feeling as I do now, which is extremely positive, obviously. I'll still be taking my time, don't worry. I know that that is very important, and the series really deserves that, and I will get more from it from taking my time. But my excitement for the series may mean I won't be taking any breaks and read kind of a book a month or something like that. Maybe even longer, we'll see, because the end of the year is looking crazy. More on that in the future. I also have heard that things don't necessarily get easier. I'm fully expecting people to say, like, you were fine with this, but it does get harder. And I know that. I have that expectation going forward, so hopefully, as of before, that expectation will lead to me being, surprised and happy with how I get on with it. But I have heard that the complexity of the world increases, and we get a lot of changes of perspectives between books. It's not linear, and I'm generally fine with both of those, and just generally feeling happy and excited to read the rest of the series. So that is it for today's non-spoiler review of Gardens of the Moon. If you've made it this far into the video, I thank you as always. Let me know if you've read this book. I know plenty of people love this book. Let me know your thoughts on anything I've said about this book. But I think that is it for now. So if you liked the video, please like it. Have a conversation with me in the comments. If you're new to the channel, please think about subscribing. I talk about fantasy and sci-fi. But for now, that is it. So I'll see you in another video soon. Goodbye.